can go
Okay.
this way.
Ẹ̀rí mọ́tò construction tí wọ́n ń kọ̀ ní ṣé ìtàn ń rin orí àbàkù tí ò dẹ̀ wọ́. Ẹ̀rí nǹkan tẹ̀ ń ṣe fún wa Nàìjíríà gbogbo àwọn ní construction wa Nàìjíríà ó yẹ ká kó wọn báyìí sínú àpò àjọ wọn lọ sáré òkun àtàlà fún nínú òkun ni o. Gbogbo àwọn tó ń gbé iṣẹ́ títì fún Nàìjíríà yẹn ó yẹ kán kó wọn báyìí àárín ibi òkun kàn tún wọn lẹ̀ síbẹ̀. Nàìjíríà náà ti ń gba owó tó wọ́n jù ní ròdù ṣíṣe. Very ó burú gan o. Ẹ máa rọra níbi bí o. Ẹ má ṣakọ bí o. Ibi ò ṣe ibi téèyàn ti lè ṣakọ ó lè yọ. Wọ́n ṣakọ wọ bí o. Ọ̀nà rí Bùdà.
Àwọn àtijọ́ a máa ń bọ̀.
Àgbà ló ń wá àgbà náà pé ọ̀rọ̀ wọn. Ó yá, mẹ́jọ àdóde wọn.
So, short information about the ancient city of Ephesus before we visit this place so that we can have a better idea what we are going to see. Otherwise, they're only stones. It doesn't have much meaning here. But if you know the history, then it's better. So, we mentioned about Amazonians, if you remember in Smyrna. The women warriors, they call them wonder women as well. They cut their right breasts to shoot. So according to the legend, the first Ephesus was found by those Amazon women. So who were these Amazon women? Or not? Like, that's another question. We mentioned about a goddess. Before Artemis in this region was Cybele, or Cybele, they call her. So they built many temples to worship to that goddess. And the nuns, the protector, the guards of the temples were only the women. So according to one tradition, those women were Amazonians. And they came to this region and they found Ephesus. The first one was found about 5,000 years ago, 3000 BC. Later on, we are going to visit the church of Apostle John. So on that hill, the first Ephesus was found, close to the sea. And then after Amazons, there was dark period. No one knows what happened to that city. And archaeologists are excavating the ancient city, and they couldn't find any evidence from the existence of humans. So according to some historians, and if those historians are Christian or Muslim or Jew, doesn't matter, because they have one common story, history in their books, and this is Noah's Ark, Ark of Noah. Noah put one male and one female animals from each species, and it is believed that the Ark of Noah is on Mount Ararat, which is in the eastern part of Turkey today. So that's why scientifically there is no evidence what happened to the people. No one knows. So that's why they call that period in this region like dark period or unknown era, about 400 years. So after this 400 years dark period, there were some local people living in this region. Carians, Lelesians, Hittites, that's where they used to live, in this area. And they also worshipped Cybele. But in the 12th century BC, Greeks came and then they started to migrate here, and then they found their own cities. 12 cities were called Ionia. So Ephesus was one of these 12 Ionic cities. And the city, in a very short time, became very important and rich city. So later on, when the Greeks found the city, they moved from the one that first one, which is on the hill where the Apostle John's Basilica is, they decided to move closer to the Artemis temple. Later on we are going to visit that place also. There's only one column left, and the temple of Artemis was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So that's the second Ephesus. But years passed, the Persians came, they invaded this place. And then Alexander the Great defeated the Persians, and he took over, and the Hellenistic period started in this area. So we call Hellenistic period, which means also Greek period. So when Alexander the Great died, we mentioned about that yesterday, his generals divided all his empire, and this part was under the rule of Lysimachus. He was one of the generals of Alexander the Great, and he came to Ephesus, closer to the sea. There was a big problem. The river, meandering river, that's called meandrous river, was bringing all the silt, alluvions, so filling the bay, silting in the bay. The ships could not enter to the port anymore. And the other problem was mosquitoes, big mosquitoes, malaria. Many people died from malaria. So Lysimachus decided to relocate that city. And he found the city here, far away from the swamp. More air here, no mosquitoes, so safer. But he expected the people to move, not normally. But no one wanted. No one wanted to leave the previous city. First reason, they didn't want to leave far away from their temples. So they were thinking that their goddess Artemis was protecting them. They needed to be close to the her. And the second reason, Lysimachus wanted to give his wife's name to the new city, Arsinoe. People didn't want that. And the third one, they didn't want to change the name. And the third one, all here, the archaeologists start digging again to see what is underneath. They found a cemetery. So when Ephesus was there, here was there. Yeah. So they didn't want to leave on the graves of their ancestors, which is understandable too. So they refused to move, but Lysimachus forced them to move. One day, it was raining a lot, and he blocked the river, and the old city was completely flooded. So people had nowhere to go, and there was available city here, and that's how they came. So today, we are going to visit the third Ephesus, and most of the ruins that we are visiting and see today are from the 3rd century before Christ, 2,300 years old city. And then, while they're living here, we visited Pergamon. You remember?
Yes.
And the Pergamon king sent in his will, let's say, bequeathed his kingdom to the Romans. That's what the Romans said. True or not, we cannot know. But that's how the Roman period started in this region. And there was a statue of a person who rebelled, and they killed so many Greeks in the area. And then there was a period when Julius Caesar was killed. After that, his adopted son, Octavius, and one of his generals, Mark Antony, had civil war. And during that civil war, some cities supported Mark Antony with Cleopatra. They came here, they lived in Ephesus for a while. And some cities, they didn't support. They were the other side, with Octavius. Here, the policy was some senators were supporting one side, other senators were supporting the other side. They didn't want to lose any. So when Octavius defeated, he took the list and he chose Ephesus in his side, and he gave it tax-free. So people were not paying taxes. And then he drew the roads, great roads, end up here. There was a port, and from this port, all the goods distributed to the other cities and islands. So Ephesus became very important city. The 4th largest city in the Roman Empire. Rome, the biggest, Antioch, Egypt, and the most prosperous city. And then slowly Christianity started in the area. Apostles started to come here, John and then Paul. So in his third missionary journey, Paul stayed in Ephesus more than 2 months. So we don't know exactly how, almost 3 years, not more than 2 years. So he was preaching in the synagogues, but later, according to the Bible, there was a school, a whole Tiranus school. We don't know where that school is today. So that's why he was preaching. And then, according to the Acts, he says in a very short time, there was no one left in all Asia who didn't hear the name of God. So his mission was very successful, what he did in Ephesus. So, why Ephesus? Why Paul chose Ephesus? For other cities he was visiting, preaching, set up the church, and then continued. But he chose here as his base because traveling was not easy back then. And then we said for Paul, there are two things, like because he was a Roman citizen, he could travel to any city. But still, on foot, he had to walk. And by ship, he had to wait the cargo ship. So it was not like today you buy your ticket and then the ship takes you somewhere. So these were all cargo ships, so vessel ships. So you had to wait in one port, and then 2 days, 3 days later, the ship was coming. So, for example, in Troas, you remember that Troas, he was preaching very late, and then the young boy fell down from the third floor, and he fell asleep. So now, why he was
brother yín nìyẹn o. Olórun.
the reason of that, probably, of course, no one knew when the ships was going to arrive. So somebody came, one of his disciples said, "Sir, tomorrow one ship is going the direction where we are going. Let's catch that." And he said, "Okay, let me finish my duty here. Let me preach." And then he was taking longer and longer because he knew that he was not going to come back to this area again because this was his last journey. He was going back to Pentecost, Jerusalem. So that's why he was rushing to go there. And then he stopped in Ephesus. Sorry, he didn't stop here. He stopped in Miletus, another city close to here. And he met Ephesus elders in Miletus. Now, according to some people, why he met in Miletus, why he didn't come back to Ephesus again. So they think there was a big rebel here. If you remember, there was Demetrius, a silversmith, and many people were protesting the Christians. So, but knowing Paul, none of these things could scare him. He wasn't afraid of to be killed or anything.
Ẹ pàtẹ́wọ́ fún Apostle Paul, ó ní ìgboyà. Ló jẹ́ kó ṣiṣẹ́ agbára.
So this cannot be a reason to stop him to visit this place again. So now there is a big project going on in Ephesus. So the ships, the cruise ships, they're planning to bring them to the shore here. And they open a canal to bring the little boats, and tourists could come all the way to here. That's what they did, and the archaeologists are working there to see before that project starts, because they didn't want that project. There's some things like artifacts in the city, silt area, sunken ships, or well, the sewage running there. They learned some things from that sewage as well. So they're working there. So I had a chance to meet the archaeologists there and ask them, what's your work? And then now they're drawing how many times the river filled that area. So